All right. Getting started, y'all. That out the way. Right in. Who's that? Hey, Steve. All right. Great little start. All right. Chapstick. Yeah. I know that's crazy looking in the camera like that. All right.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego diddling. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host and third eye optometrist, Patrice Gibbs, here to get your eye open. We got a lot that went on this week, and we got a lot to talk about this morning. It looks like I'm going to be on my own today. My co-host and intellectual surgeon, Nsoromma, had some training to do, so he won't be in today. But that's all right. That's all right. We will still make it happen. All right. You know what? What I'm going to do, get this disclaimer out the way right quick. All right.
The views and opinions expressed on the Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
Hey, Jardea. All right.
WHGE 95.3 FM. And as I always do, even though we got a lot to cover, I always start out with some history. What's the day? Today is the 8th, is it? Yeah. So the 7th, April the 7th, 1915, Billie Holiday was born into the world. And that's the deal. For those of you that may not be into jazz or too young or haven't heard of Billie Holiday, her importance to us cannot be discounted. And turn it down some. All right. Not only her importance as an artist, but her importance to our condition as black people. Yeah, I ran up on this article, and I'm going to read some of it to you. How Strange Fruit Killed Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday, who throughout her career called public attention to the devastating impact of white supremacy, drew the notice of the Commissioner for the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He ordered her to stop singing this song. Stop singing Strange Fruit. If you don't know, or you haven't ever heard of Strange Fruit, look it up on YouTube. Is a hell of a song, probably one of the earliest black protest songs. Billie Holiday and Mr. at Downbeat in New York City. All right, excuse me, I'm looking at a photo of her and her dog, Mr. She loved that dog. Now, Strange Fruit may have been written by American songwriter and poet Abel Meeropol, also known as Lewis Allen, but ever since Billie Holiday sang the 3 brief stanzas to music in 1937, she owned it. Holiday, born Eleonora Fagan, says she always thought of her father when she sang Strange Fruit. He died at age 39 after being denied medical treatment at Texas White-Only Hospital. Because of that memory, Holiday was reluctant to perform the song, but did so anyway to tell people about the reality of life as a black man in America. And I tell you, caused her a lot of trouble in her career. It reminded me of how Pop died, she wrote in her autobiography. But I had to keep singing it, not only because people asked for it, but because 20 years after Pop died, the things that killed him are still happening in the South. The song was so poignant for Holiday that she laid down some rules when she sang it at her gigs. She would close the evening with the song. The waiters would stop service when she began, and the room would be in total darkness except for a spotlight on her face. There would be no encore. And Lady Day, as Holiday was called by many at the time, began to work the song into her repertoire 16 years before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Jazz writer Leonard Feather referred to the song as the first significant protest in words and music, the first significant cry against racism. The song's lyrics were shocking to some. Holiday's mostly white audiences. Southern trees bear strange fruit, but on leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. At times, her performance of the song was met with fierce pushback. Though many people knew that the lynchings of African Americans in the South were common, there was a resistance to ending the practice among Southern whites. Let me tell you something. Congress did not vote in a law against lynching until 2018? It was fairly recent. Racism combined with a popular desire to limit federal power over local concerns kept people in the North from making any successful moves to end lynching in the South. Actually, they just wouldn't do a damn thing about it. In the end, Billie Holiday's insistence on performing Strange Fruit may have been responsible for her demise. One of the primary attempts to silence her came from a man named Harry Anslinger, the first commissioner for the Bureau of Narcotics. And he was an extreme racist, even for the 1930s. As Johan Hari details in Chasing the Scream, the first and last days of the war on drugs, Anslinger claimed that narcotics made black people forget their place in the fabric of American society, and that jazz musicians were dangerous in particular, creating satanic music under the influence of marijuana. Yeah, that's right, Jardea. Harry Anslinger, he harassed her. One of Anslinger's men was paid to track Holiday and frame her with buying and using heroin. She spent 18 months in prison behind that crap. When she was released in 1948, the federal government refused to renew her cabaret license. mandatory for any performer playing or singing at any club or bar serving alcohol. This utterly undermined her career, although Holiday was able to perform multiple sold-out Carnegie Hall performances over the next several years. She could no longer travel the nightclub circuit. Unable to perform regularly at venues she loved, and to stop remembering a childhood that included being raped at age 10 and working in a brothel with her mother, Holiday eventually began using heroin again. When she checked into New York hospital in 1959, her liver was failing and cancerous. She is emaciated and her heart and lungs were compromised. Because of her condition, she didn't want to stay there. They're going to kill me. They're going to kill me in there. Don't let them. She persistently told friends and family. Indeed, Anslinger's men, sensing a macabre opportunity, showed up at her hospital bedside, handcuffed her to the bed, took mug shots. This woman's laying there dying of heart failure and liver cancer. Removed gifts from the room that people brought to the room, and stationed 2 cops at the door. Even so, as doctors began methadone treatment, Holiday began to improve, gaining some weight and improving slowly. Anslinger wasn't having that. His men prevented hospital staff from administering any further methadone. She succumbed to death within days. The only surviving film version of Holiday performing the song is from the British cabaret show Chelsea at 9, recorded February 25th, 1959, and released in March of the same year, just a few months before she died. In that performance, her voice is strong and impressive. The raw emotion, simply devastating. Don't get it mixed. Now, I know I told this story before, but don't get it mixed. The U.S. government murdered Billie Holiday. This is the Open Eye. I'm Patrice Gibbs. Let me see what I got here. Wait a minute. All right. Yeah. No. Just give me a second. I just get a little update here while I get my notes in order, y'all. All right. A little music break here. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. Yeah, you're right, Jardea. The enemy doing what the enemy does. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. I'm your host, Patrice Gibbs. All right. Tuesday, April 4th was I don't like calling it anniversary, was the 55th year marking the murder of Dr. King. Mm-hmm. Dr. King said, and this is for all you indigenous people and what have you. Dr. King said, our heritage is Africa. We should never seek to break the ties, nor should the Africans. Absolutely. 55 years after his death, Dr. King remains a prophet without honor in the institution that nurtured him, the Black church. And that's not a recent phenomenon. At the time of Dr. King's death, the vast majority of Black churches considered him a troublemaker. Black people. And he was not welcome in many Black churches. Oh, now they pay mealy-mouthed, pious irrelevancies to his legacy a couple of times a year. But do not speak truth to power as Dr. King did. Most well-known black ministers nowadays are more concerned with this prosperity preaching instead of the liberation theology that Dr. King preached. Let's see, that's not profitable. Right? Any black minister preaching liberation theology can expect to get his government grants cut. They ain't doing that. That's word. You know, I tell you something, and it's interesting. I see many people say that Dr. King woke up in the later years of his life. You know, and you know what? I tell you something, I tell people this all the time. Turn it down a little bit. All right. It's been 55 years since Martin Luther King was assassinated. Dr. King was woke. All right. You know, I'm looking at this, and it says by a white supremacist in Memphis. You know, I don't think so. It's been proven that James Earl Ray did not kill Dr. King. The U.S. government did. Yeah. Murder one of our greatest voices and then give us a holiday. See, one of the things that Dr. Clark teaches us is stop looking to the powers that be, mainstream white supremacist society, to recognize our heroes and leaders. As I personally, I really don't give a damn that, you know, they enacted into law Dr. King's birthday as a holiday. I really don't. Because what most people do on Dr. King's holiday is BS their way, you know, through some social services. Now, in a few months, the Supreme Court is likely to put an end to affirmative action. And, of course, many in the conservative movement will trumpet Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, not only justifying but also enjoining us to bring an end to racial justice efforts. But the court won't just stop with affirmative action. Their crusade will carry on toward eliminating race-conscious policies in employment, supply chains, and even corporate board composition, undoing decades of progress in American life. And they're going to do it all in King's name. See, what they do is they try to use Dr. King's words and weaponize them against black people. That tell you how sorry and racist these bastards are. We should be recognized by the content of our character and praise the phrase. I'm paraphrasing. I said phrasing, but paraphrasing. You know, they take those words. But not by the content of our character. They done nothing to dismantle the white supremacist system that we live under. And then when they jump up and weaponize Dr. King's words, taking them out of context with their phony racist asses, and saying that, you know, he wouldn't be for reparations, he wouldn't be for affirmative action, he would be fairness across the board, you know, as if Dr. King only made one speech, and they only take one little line out that speech, you know, that you know, they manipulate and what have you. One little line showing without a doubt, you know, and they homogenize that one little line and make it acceptable to white supremacy and go to hell. Because see, King made no secret of his belief that work had to be done to bring people together and create true and equal inclusion. Desegregation alone is empty and shallow. That's what Dr. King said. We must be aware of the fact that the ultimate goal is integration, and desegregation is only the first step on the road to good society. See, what he meant by integration was open access to the society that black people were constantly denied. Open access to housing, to employment. Open access to entrepreneurship without the pressure of white supremacy destroying your business. Because they do that even now. If you're a black person in America in business, you can expect L&I, license and inspection, your local government, the police. They'll run up in your business and plant some drugs and then drag you out of there and shut you down. See, one of the things that Dr. King said was, it didn't cost anything. It didn't cost America anything to let us sit on the front of the bus, to let us go in restaurants. See, that had no real economic impact. As a matter of fact, what it had was economic benefit for mainstream white society. With Dr. King, next step was to change the economic system. And he had the following, the power to do it. This is why they feared him. Because Dr. King, especially in his later years when he began to focus more militantly on the economic structure of the country, when he began to focus on bringing marginalized people together, it totally changed the system. It's something that, as I've told you many times, the greatest threat to America is black unity. And this is why Dr. King was murdered. And yes, they critique all other races, but they don't hold themselves accountable to the same standards. Don't hold themselves accountable to the same standards. King warned us that the arc of justice does not bend unceasingly toward justice, and that we must brace ourselves for setbacks. So when the Supreme Court inevitably hands us another setback, we must forge ahead. We should vigorously compensate by recruiting diverse students into our school and then retaining them by actually reflecting their experiences and histories in our curricula. Now that's something I'm not sure that I can go with. Because what we are learning here is that the education system has become something nefarious, especially for our people. I got a couple of things I'm going to cover on that. And like I said, what the goal and one of the tactics of white supremacists and so-called conservatives is to try to weaponize Dr. King's words against us. All right? 55 years ago, Dr. King was murdered as he stood minding his own business on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. It's important that it be phrased that way because in the years since his death, the same type of white people who wanted him dead because of the words he said now weaponize his words and his death against black people whenever they want to put us in our place. Because we are so bold as to talk about race and racism and issues of racist justice openly and out loud. It's a sad and tired refrain that we hear over and over and over again from people who claim to know him and his works, but prove time and time again that they have only managed to memorize at best a few words out of many he said during his time on earth. Remember, this man was only 39 years old. Only 39 years old. Don't get it mixed. King was a revolutionary black activist who was smart, thoughtful, practiced, and intentional in and about his work. The problem is, as white supremacy is want to do, King's words, his mission, his legacy, and history have been completely whitewashed and sanitized to fit the narrative that suits a white supremacist ideology. Don't let them get away with that, y'all. Never let them get away with that. And I know it's some of us, you know, that you had this ideal, mixed up ideal, that Dr. King wasn't revolutionary enough. He wasn't militant enough because he used nonviolence as a tactic. Like I said, don't get it mixed. Dr. King was woke from the start. Why do you think some of these black churches who were comfortable in their slot in white supremacy didn't want Dr. King in their church? Didn't want Dr. King upsetting the apple cart. Don't get it mixed. I'm Patrice Gibbs, WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. What's the girl's name here? Right there. That's it. I'm sure by now we've all heard about the controversy of the women's basketball team. Okay. You know, a lot of sportscasters came out against the young lady, geez Louise, I thought I had her name written down here. Help me out, y'all. But at any rate, you know, she did the wave your hand and your face thing at, what's the other one named? Caitlin Clark. And, oh Lord, this young lady led her team to victory. Okay, and as happens when they're championship teams, yeah, Angel Reese, thank you, brother. Yeah, Angel Reese. You know, oh, see her interview. When she did it, the white sportscasters who celebrated Caitlin Clark, ESPN did a whole segment on her fire, on her competitiveness. When she went around waving her hand in her face, they said you got it from John Chenna, but actually it came from a member. And John Chenna said during that, you can't see me wave your hand in your face. John Chenna said that came from, I forgot his name, but he was a member of G Unit, rapper in 50 Cent's camp. Okay. Keith Olbermann. I got a big middle finger for you, Keith Olbermann, who has often spoken out on racial issues on our side. called this young queen an effing idiot for doing the same thing that Caitlin Clark did. Many of these white sportscasters had disparaging words, denigrating words for this young black queen, for Angel Reese. Okay? Oh, they cheered on Caitlin Clark. And, oh yeah, LSU kicked Iowa's ass, too. It wasn't no close game. I think the score was like 85 to 105, something like 20 points. They spanked them. Now, when you have championship teams win big tournaments like March Madness, the championship team is invited to the White House, congratulated by the president, going about their business. Yeah, we were at the White House. Oh, yeah, but Jill Biden showed herself to be a loyal member of white supremacy, didn't she? Because what Jill Biden did, she went full Karen and demanded affirmative action for white basketball players. That's what she did. There's no precedent of the loser being invited to the White House. We're not giving out participation trophies. First Lady Jill Biden caused a racial firestorm by suggesting the mostly white Iowa's women's basketball team, losers of the NCAA championship game, should be celebrated at the White House alongside the actual winners. The mostly black Louisiana State University Tigers. Oh, I know we'll have the champions come to the White House. We always do. So we hope LSU will come, Jill Biden said during an appearance in Denver. Excuse me. But you know, I'm going to tell Joe, I think Iowa should come too, because they played such a good game. I don't give a damn. That's never been done. And of course, she was immediately denounced for what many saw as her attempt to coddle white losers at the expense of black winners by proposing the equivalent of a participation trophy. I hate that crap. Basically, it's affirmative action in the form of unprecedented White House invite. And that's an honor, like I said, that's traditionally reserved for championship teams. Okay? We all have a duty to condemn Dr. First Lady Biden's horrific attempt to erase black women and coddle white fragility. It's just as critical that we continue to honor her desire to be referred to as doctor. Failing to do so would be a moral equivalent of an act of violence against women. Oh, bug. Yeah. After once again being exposed as a condescending racist, Dr. First Lady Biden tried to walk back her condescending and racist remarks. She sent out her press secretary that Biden goes forward to celebrating the LSU Tigers on their championship win at the White House. Yeah, after she had already muddied it up with her participation trophy. Like I said, I can't stand that. You win some, you lose some. And they be thinking when I played Little League, we didn't have participation trophies. The winner got a trophy. That's it. Who remembers who came in second place? I tell you what. Tell me who the Miami Dolphins beat in 72 in their undefeated year in football. One guess. Yeah, crickets. That's right. That's right, because who remembers the loser? WHGE 95.3 FM, Dove and I. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. There's the, I see Brother Jardea, yes, the truth always hurts. I have something here by Sister Tracy Johnson. Sister Tracy, you are Dilifu Minsani, her doctor name. You know, we forgive too much. All right? Remember the white couple in Georgia that crashed a child's birthday party, making threats, waving guns, Confederate flags, and the N-word? Yeah. Well, they got charged with hate crimes. And the judge, he really wasn't feeling it. There's a white judge, too. Oh, yeah. Oh, they cried. They just cried and cried. Because the husband got 28 years and the wife got 6 years. All right? And what did the mother of the birthday boy do in court? Yeah, I feel your tears. You know what? I forgive you. You know, stop that. Sister Tracy said this is part of the reason why we are still in the same predicament. No matter what the atrocity, no matter the evil committed against our children, no matter how depraved the act may be, we forgive. This continue ongoing forgiveness without the slightest hint of defending ourselves, and ours is given approval and permission to continue to terrorize and kill not only us, but our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. We are responsible for making it clear that we won't forgive terrorism and murder, and that we will defend ours. Or we could continue to sign off on mistreatment for generations to come by the continued forgiveness of being oppressed. It's a quote from Sister Tracy. Absolutely agree with you, sister. I sort of absolutely agree with you. And you know, when I heard that black woman sway by them fake tears, I wanted to slap a muzzle on her. If the situation was reversed, they would have called for your lynching with no compassion or forgiveness. Now, I agree with you, Brother Jardea. That should be looked at as a treasonous act. Well, the brother in Texas that was murdered in his own apartment, and his mother forgave his murderer, or his brother, whoever it was, and hugged her. See, I'm not a forgiving man. You heard me say this before. If you slap me and apologize, my face still stings. If you have oppressed my people, remove the symbols that represent that oppression. My grandfathers and grandmothers didn't survive that oppression. And my brothers and sisters are still incarcerated. I don't forgive a damn thing. My sons and daughters are still being murdered. And your children are still benefiting from the privilege of our stolen labor. I'll be damned if I forgive a thing. I've never been forgiven for being born black. And nor do I ask you to kiss my ass. As a matter of fact, you can kiss my proud black ass. Richard Pryor, 1977. I was told I'm better than this. That my vocabulary far exceeds the provocative language in this tirade. You know what? I could write a 10-page essay with $20 and $30 words on why an African should never forgive the slightest transgression committed against him. Go to hell. Not today. Not today. You know, white folks out here acting like The criminal justice system in America is skewed against a rich, privileged, connected, white former president, but not against black men who are profiled, targeted, and disparately arrested and convicted. Hold on to your seats, because this is getting ready to get rough. And I've seen it so many times. White conservatives will tell you there's no such thing as institutional racism in America, and certainly not in the American justice system. Not in this century, certainly not in this decade. See, that's the argument against critical race theory. You've probably heard it before, that there's zero evidence that race is a decisive factor in judicial outcomes today. And while sure, such racism existed in the Jim Crow days of the American South, those days are well behind us, and nothing like that happens today. That's the rhetoric. It makes you think of the quote I often say from Uncle Richard. And Uncle Richard was asked, how far south you gotta go to be south? You south of Canada? Damn it, you south. Might be south of the North Pole. Let me say that again. And while sure, such racism existed in the Jim Crow days of the American South, those days are well behind us, and nothing like that happens today. Yeah, that's the rhetoric. The reality is Wesley Phelps and Lakeith Smith. I've been following this story and hadn't got to it. I apologize for that. One name you probably heard of a lot over the past week. The other name is probably less well known, having popped up on a couple of social media pages. But let me tell you a bit about both of them. Both Smith and Phelps did illegal things. There's no denying that. Okay? Smith, who was 15 at the time of his illegal acts, went with some friends, mostly older friends, to rob unoccupied houses in Millbrook. Smith was a willing participant. He chose to commit crimes. Okay? The cops were called. Smith and his friends ran. Police say one of them fired a gun at police. I don't believe that. One cop returned fire, striking Smith's friend and killing him. Smith was charged with murder under Alabama's felony murder statute and sentenced initially to 65 years in prison. He didn't actually commit the murder. The cop murdered that child, or murdered his friend. I'm not sure how old the friend was. That 15-year-old would have been 80 when he next spent a day as a free man, despite never even firing a gun. And you know, being an actual minor child. Judge Sibley Reynolds imposed that sentence. The Elmore County District Attorney's Office pushed for it and spoke gleefully of the justice it provided. Where the hell is the justice on that? On the same day that Smith was hit with essentially a life sentence for his first offense, Phelps was also before Sibley Reynolds. He too had caused the death. Now see, I'm going to have to backtrack on that. Okay? Because Lakeith Smith didn't cause anyone's death. He was involved in the commission of a crime when the cop shot his friend in the back. Okay? But Phelps' circumstances are a bit different. Phelps, who was 28 years old at the time, had an extensive criminal record and had already served time. Remember, this was Lakeith Smith's first offense. 65 years in jail. Phelps was out on parole. If you're wondering how he managed that, he's white. He has several new warrants out for his arrest when cops in Alexander, new warrants, out on parole, cutting a duster. Cops in Alexander City spotted him and his girlfriend in a stolen vehicle. A chase began and ended in Elmore County, where Phelps, who was also high at the time, crashed the car, killing his girlfriend. That was his goddamn fault. After recovering in the hospital, Phelps entered a plea deal with the Elmore County DA's office, the same office that was proud of its work and locking up a 15-year-old for the next 65 years. That didn't include felony murder, and wiped away several of Phelps' charges. On his plea agreement documents, the DA's office notes that Phelps has a strong, positive support system in the community and has exhibited a positive employment history. He's out on bail with several warrants in a stolen car, but he has a positive employment history. He also admits to 8 previous felony convictions. What happened to the 3-strike law? Because this is an arch goddamn criminal. 8 felony convictions? What did Judge Sibley Reynolds do? He sentenced him to serve 3 years. Remember, he was responsible for the death of his girlfriend and gave him credit for time served. Just over a year later, Phelps, like I told you, an arch criminal, out of prison and picked up 4 more felonies. Oh, it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. Because somehow, Wesley Phelps, with now 14 felony convictions, a habitual criminal, including causing the death of his girlfriend, was granted parole by Alabama's notoriously stingy Pardons and Parole Board in July of 2022. And he was one of just 3 people to be granted parole that day out of 36. All 3 were white. All 3 were habitual criminals. It took Phelps roughly 2 months to find his way back to prison. He was arrested in October 2022 on 4 more charges, including resisting arrest. He had no business on the street. He's currently in Kilby Correctional with a minimal release date of December 2024. That's roughly 25 years before Lakeith Smith will get out. Now, there will be those who dive into the cases and attempt long explanatory emails laying out all the tiny details that could have led to such a sentence. Shove them. Keep them. I don't want to hear that crap. Because a system that allows a judge to reduce the sentence for killing an innocent passenger in a getaway car to just over a year has a lot of built-in leeway that should have given the same judge some discretion in sentencing a minor to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Discretion that the DA's office could have sought instead of pushing forward on felony murder charges. And I tell you, boy, instead, the sentence that was handed to Smith was so harsh that the Alabama Criminal Appeals Court had to send the case back to Reynolds, who is technically retired, but made an exception for this particular case to appropriately apply sentencing laws. So Reynolds had the discretion last week to let Smith out with the 8 years that he's already served. Now, this arch criminal Phelps kill his girlfriend, ain't did a year, and do out again a habitual criminal next year. 8 years is more than enough. Actually, way too much. But no, Reynolds still imposed the maximum allowed. After the sentencing, DA C.J. Robinson said he was pleased that Smith hadn't shown enough remorse. That he was pleased and that he felt Smith hadn't shown enough remorse. Smith gave a lengthy statement apologizing for his actions and taking responsibility. There was also plenty of evidence submitted to the court that he's been nothing short of a model prisoner. It didn't matter. So the same judge in the same courtroom where Wesley Phelps and his 8 previous felonies danced away with less than half the time that Smith had already served, Smith was taught a real lesson, one in which your appearance seems to play a minor role in whether a judge and a DA view you as a hopeless criminal, despite very little evidence to suggest such, or a temporary, misguided, redeemable soul, despite all the evidence in the world suggesting otherwise. That's a lesson we should all learn, because his reduced sentence was 30 years. Young Mr. Smith went in jail at 15, is now 23, been a model prisoner for 8 years. Okay. And you think that we've advanced? They let an arch criminal go and sentence this child. Because to me at 23, I'm 62. He's still a child. He hasn't had a chance to become an adult. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. Oh, what happened there? Did I do that? Yes, I did. Yep, only got a couple of minutes left, y'all. Wanted to get into some other things, but that's okay. We'll get them next week. Oh, yeah, of course, yesterday was, for you Christians, was Good Friday. I'm sorry, but it wasn't good for Jesus. And he rose on the 3rd day. Let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Wait a minute. Friday, Saturday. Can't count. Can't count. Yeah, because it would be Monday. And you know, it's just something else. You have to wonder about, are people still caught up in this religion? Let me tell you something. Once again, I want to thank Tracy for posting this. No, actually, this was Sister Moti. All right. There's a book that was published during the early days of slavery. It was called How to Make a Negro Christian. Okay, it's a book written during the slavery period in America by Reverend Dr. Charles Colcock Jones. He was a major slave owner that owned 3 plantations. He developed a system to make slaves more submissive and easier to control by converting them to Christianity. Over time, his methods proved highly successful and became standard operating procedures. And no doubt he was, of course we say it's a myth, it may or may not happen, the Willie Lynch letter, but no doubt that had to be an influence. You know, and so much I could go into on our religion. I mean, for instance, you know what? Here's, wait a minute. I know I got this. I'm gonna close it out with this. All right. This is something. Okay, Christian creationists reject science. But they believe a donkey talked, a man lived in a fish, a woman turned salt, a woman turned to salt, a snake talked, a man rode a tornado to heaven. The sun stood still for a whole day. Hundreds of thousands of animals lived on a 500-foot boat. On a 500-foot boat. See, the thing is this. If you dispel the myth of Noah in the boat, you dispel the whole thing, really. Because Noah, let me see something. Hold on. I got something right here. I'm going to hit this off before I get out of here right quick. And I don't want to cut into Yorkie's time, Brother Thomas, Timeless Thomas. But I just want to share this with y'all right quick before I get out of here. All right. Now, Noah had 3 sons. All right. So Noah, his 3 sons, their wives, Noah and his wife. That's 8 people. Yeah. That's 8 people. Now the math just don't math. Okay, because according to biblical scholars, the flood, when they got off the boat, it was 2344 BC. Okay, and 468 years later, Jacob comes to Egypt. Jacob, whom God renamed Israel. Now, the interesting thing is the sons of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Okay, these were, Noah's the new Adam. So his sons repopulated the earth. Interestingly, the sons of Ham, who God cursed, and your son Canaan will serve your brother's sons, and this, that, and the other. When Jacob came to Egypt, Egypt was a country. I mean, it was an empire. All the children of Ham, we know it's a myth, okay, supposedly had civilizations, had empires, had nations. Okay? 468 years later, the son of, I guess, Japheth, who supposedly is the father of Europeans, they had 80 people. 80 people. These the children of, Ham, like I said, we know it's a myth, had nations. 468 years. Okay? So the next time that you feel foolish, remember, it's people that actually believe that in 80 years, Egypt, Ethiopia, and other nations in Africa were built up in 80 years. So the next time you feel foolish or dumb, just remember that there are people that believe that 2 penguins went from Antarctica to the Middle East and got on the boat with Noah. Damn. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is The Open Eye. I'm your host, Patrice Gibbs. Big shout out to my partner, Nsoromma. As word. And as I always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority. He treat you as an option. I'm Patrice Gibbs.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And as I always tell you, global African supremacy. Because the world was a much better place when the black man ruled. All right. Thanks, Jardea. Peace, y'all.